How's everybody doing? Thanks again for visiting my channel. Today I'm going to show you guys one of the most affordable solutions in high-powered lighting. Today I'm reviewing the GVM Pro SD650B bicolor light. This is the light right here, and I'm going to show you guys everything there is to know about this light. I know there are a lot of people who already reviewed this light, but one thing that I can pretty much guarantee you, besides the color spectrometer type of deal, in this video you're going to find absolutely everything that there is to know about this particular light here. So stay tuned, don't go anywhere, I'll be right back. I think like for 10 years, a lot of people, they'd like to do the thumbnails like this, with his facial expression. Does that work? Because that's not me, so I can't see myself doing that. And the usual disclaimer, GVM sent me this light for me to test it out. All my words and opinions that are my own. This review is unbiased regardless of the fact that they sent this light to me. This video is not sponsored by GVM and I don't get paid to say anything here. And to keep the video going here is a lot easier when I actually put everything here, so you're welcome to pause the video to actually read every single thing on the specification of this light. And also I included very important things on the manual, how not to damage this light, your V-mount batteries and the light in general. So a light like this requires a great case and is very sturdy. Come with a beautiful case, and as you see, everything is isolated inside. This part over here, I don't Velcro, I just slide it off like this, and it's very cushiony and with solid materials in the middle. So here you get the light, obviously, the reflector, the ballast, and over here is a separate compartment. And over here is the actual super clamp for the ballast. A very generous power cord in size, in which also has the power con type of connectors, which is great. And here's a little adapter for flat surfaces. You just install it right here. And this is the part that connects the ballast to the light. I wish the cable was a little bit longer in case you need to put this light a little bit higher. Now here's the thing, to remove the reflector, you have to remove the light first because the yoke goes right inside here and there's a protective material from the shipping. Do not throw this away because you're going to need this at all times, every time you put this thing back and out of the case. So first thing you want to do is to remove the light first at this angle, and then you remove the reflector. And again, don't throw this away. Now, even though this seems like a no-brainer, first you want to put the reflector back this way on the reverse mode, because I've seen at least 3 people that actually put the yoke right on top here. So you're going to want to have the yoke loose and this facing downwards like this. This is a heavy light. This is why I'm doing this here. So you want to hold this from the bottom here, the front, and with the yoke loose, grab it like this here, and then insert it this way, and make sure the thing goes right in the middle, and then the light sits right back here. So at the bottom here, you notice there are no feet or any protection, so be careful on landing this thing on a dirty surface. And just so you know, this video is also chapter indexed for convenience to what you want to see here, but I would actually recommend or ask kindly that you guys don't skip anything, because even if this video is long, I'm not wasting 1 second of your time. This whole thing is compressed with pure information, so sit back, relax, and just enjoy the video. And to make these videos, it takes sometimes up to 2 days to do this whole thing here, so I would appreciate if you guys watch the whole thing. In this video, the only thing that you're not going to be seeing here is the actual color spectrometer with a Sekonic C800 to actually show every single channel of the color reproduction of this light. And I tell you what, just by looking at the light for the first time power is on, I can already tell if this light is going to be a little bit too warm or too cold on a 5600 degrees Kelvin range, for example. And if you do this for a living, even if you have a team, when I have a corporate production, I take all my guys with me. Even if I have the Sekonic C800 with me right on set, I don't have time to do this because, you know, some things get, you know, behind schedule, and I don't have time to be fumbling around with these things here. So this is what I do always. I always shoot as close as possible to the right thing, and I keep the color correction to a minimum, because the more you color correct and you modify the file, it will affect the quality of your video. So first of all, regardless of what the light is doing, shoot bright. And one thing to keep in mind here as far as color accuracy and all, I'm currently using a picture profile called Cinetech, which I downloaded from the internet on all my Canon cameras. I just think they do a better job, because when I try to shoot on neutral settings on these cameras, this particular mirrorless cameras and most DSLRs, including the 1DX Mark II, Mark III, and this one here, which is the Canon R3, they crush the blacks too much, which I don't like. Of course, you can actually correct in post-production, but this particular picture profile, it actually makes the blacks nicer. They bring it up up a little bit, but they do have a strong magenta cast and is actually too warm, which by the way, I always find that some cameras, including the R3, a little bit too warm for 5600 degrees Kelvin. So before we go crazy with the color spectrometer, that thing costs about $1,800. And of course, this is a very important tool to have, especially if you are on a very big production that every little Kelvin degree matters. But most of us that do commercial weddings and everything, that really doesn't really apply that much. And by the way, your style of editing, your picture profile that you use, whatever that is, even if this light was indeed on a dot 5600 degrees Kelvin there, and the Sekonic says also 56.00, all this stuff won't matter when we actually edit a finished product, because everybody changes their colors there on the edit. Everybody has a particular preference, you know, so just to keep that in mind. Any modifier that you put in front of this light or any other light, you're going to change the color temperature. Everything is going to get altered. It's very difficult to tell what exactly is going accurate here. Is it the camera that's off? Is it this light that's going off here? Maybe even your color spectrometer is out of calibration. All these things are taken into account. And one more thing to take into account here, you are getting a 650 watt light for under $1,000. The price of this light is $999. But don't get me wrong, $1,000 is a very decent sum of money, but for what you're getting is actually very affordable. And the only difference between an Aperture 600X and this one here is that the Aperture does weather seal and a couple other things, and it is slightly more accurate than this light. So when you purchase a light, there are three factors to consider: how bright the light is, how accurate the light reproduces color, and also the flexibility of the colors on the light itself. For example, this is a bicolor light. I think you should consider always a bicolor light, because you will never know when you arrive on a place, whether it is a venue or a doctor's office or whatever that is. When you get there, what if the predominant light is tungsten? And then you either have to put a gel on the daylight or on the light. So having a bicolor, all you have to do is to match the ambience there from 6800 degrees Kelvin all the way to 2800 degrees Kelvin. Another thing as far as brightness, if 650 watt seems overkill to you, it might not be. Again, even if you're shooting on a small place, when you actually place this light close to a subject, yes, any 60 watt light will do, any 100 watt light will do. But what if you are actually having to deal with an actor or a talent of some sort, that it is behind a window, that the sunlight is actually blasting outside? You will need this light, or maybe 2 or 3 of this light, depending on the situation here. So be always prepared for enough brightness and also the flexibility of colors here. That's always a good thing.
Okay.
Quiet on the set. And action.
Hola, mi nombre es Dorimar Bonilla. I was born and raised in the island of Puerto Rico. You may have previously seen me in some of the Latin Dancing with the Stars shows like Mis Sueños Bailar or Mira Quien Baila.
Another example here with a 650 watt light, even if you are shooting on a small room, when you actually have to bounce the light off the ceiling, you're going to have to get a lot of power out of these lights. And sometimes you have to close your aperture somehow, either for product photography. And speaking of photography, a 650 watt light is the minimum for photography, because photography is different. A lot of times you're going to be shooting f8, f5.6, f10, f11, whether it is a product photography or there's somebody behind in a portrait like this here. So depth of field, they don't want the other person to be out of focus, right? And most of the time, 650 watts is not enough. A 1200 watt light is actually plenty for photography. That's why I always use the strobes over there, because 200 watt lights, 300 watts light, they're not going to cut it. So if you're going to use less powerful lights for photography, for example, even if it is a single person portrait, you're going to have to shoot at f1.8, maybe f2.8 maximum, and ask the subject to kind of freeze, because you're going to be shooting at 1/60th or 1/80th of a second. So I can't stress that enough. For photography, especially dealing with continuous light, get the most powerful LED you can afford. Especially when you place a large softbox here, you're going to reduce its brightness to at least 75%. With the bare bulb, with the reflector, is a different thing. But with the softbox, everything gets darker. I forgot to mention that the light that I was filming here this whole time was the GVM ST300R. That's an RGB light, by the way. But this one here right now is the very GVM Pro SD650B right there. So I'm going to record right now. So this is the actual light right here, right? And by the way, it's actually mounted on a normal stand. This is a beast of a stand from B&H. This only costs $58. This is not a recommended stand for this, because this is incredibly heavy. To put this up here, it requires a lot of strength. So as you can see, I'm even pushing on a stand like this here. It's gonna wobble, right? But look how sturdy that is. Again, this is not a recommended stand for this, but you can actually get away with this if you're actually doing something on the studio just by yourself. As long as you know what you're doing, this should be okay. And the most recommended stands are these. This is the combo stands, and unfortunately these stands, they range from $500 to $600. This whole thing is made of steel. This is a beauty. And this one here, you can actually mount a light straight, as you can see here in this hole, instead of the baby pin type of deal, which are these, right? So this particular light stand here, you can actually remove this knob and it becomes a full junior stand type of pin here. These are also professional light stands from B&H, but it's not really recommended for lights of this weight here. You see the light right there? This is actually on a professional boom that looks just like this here, but due to the excessive weight of this light, you cannot possibly or safely place this light on a boom there. You will need something called the Menace arm, which is actually very expensive and requires at least 2 or 3 people to assemble this whole thing here. So, you know, don't get cute with this light. Keep it like this here in a safe position. Don't get the light 20 feet high with a super tall stand. This is not what these lights are meant to, unless you have the proper hardware to actually place this light this high. It can be on the ceiling with the proper things, with the safety steel cables here, but again, be careful. These lights, they're no joke. Now here's the actual super clamp that comes included with this ballast. So to remove, make sure you press this button first, grab it from the top handle, and then it removes. And then you very carefully come here and tilt it. And there you go. Make sure this release button is not this way here. It has to be all the way in for you to safely put the ballast right here. Now, as you can see, the super clamp is very wide and there is plenty of screw space here to even, you know, do more, like wide. This is as wide as this here. So the best way to actually make this work the fastest way as possible, you just, you know, grab this thing here and then you freely rotate this here. Instead of you like, you know, doing like, so you grab it here, and then you insert it right there, and then grab it again from here, and there you go. This is the easiest way to hook this up here. Unless you want to do the, you know. So here's the Pro SD650B in front of me. The camera is set to ISO 500 and aperture f4. And I actually forgot to switch it back to 800 ISO for the background right there. So I'm not going to do this right now. I'm going to show you here. This light with the softbox installed is utilizing only 4.9% of brightness, and it is at 5600 degrees Kelvin, and as you can see, it does a phenomenal job. And let me change it back to ISO 800 here. So there you go, ISO 800. So right now I'm gonna have to reduce it back to, it's a good thing that this thing has 0.1% increments, so I can actually see the zebras getting out of my forehead right there. So 3.9% with the softbox. This thing is exactly about 4 or 5 feet away. I can touch the softbox here. So this is what you get with this light, which is crazy. So 3.9% with the softbox, 5600 degrees Kelvin. One thing to keep in mind here, don't forget that this light is set all the way down to 4%, and no LED light is going to be accurate at the setting. And as you can see here, it does a pretty good job the way it is. But ideally, you have to set this light to at least 10%, ideally 20% or higher. And again, this is a $999 light, so don't push it. You're not going to be spending $3,500, $2,000, $4,000 for a 600 watt light, right? So it's very affordable and it does the job. However, on the tungsten side, this light is not going to do it for you because the skin tones are not going to be accurate, even if you actually crank it up to 20% or 50%, because there are some channels, especially on the blue range, even though it has nothing to do with the skin tone, but the whole thing contributes to, you know, it's complicated. But at the setting of 3200, for example, and of course the camera is still set to daylight, but what I'm trying to say here, the skin tones are not great at this particular setting with this light. There are other few lights that can do a much better job, but these lights are on the upper $3,500 and higher. They are RGB lights with some other cyan controls and some other stuff that regular RGB, WW or AW don't have, to bring it down to the most accurate color as possible regarding tungsten light. But for this particular scenario here, you can actually do some artsy things with a weird warm color at somebody or at something, which I think is going to look cool. And let's see, all the way down to 2700 degrees Kelvin, and I just noticed right now that the brightness increased, so I'm going to have to reduce the intensity even more. Let's see, until the zebra gets off my forehead right there. So right now I'm at 2.5% here, which is crazy. So right now I have the ISO set to 100 and the aperture is at 4, and the current setting of the light brightness is 30%. So it gives you this here. And these are the colors that this light is actually producing right now. Right now the light is set to 3200 degrees Kelvin, and so is the light, and this is what you get as far as color correcting to the same color temperature as the light is set currently. So right now I'm doing a quick test here. Nothing special, but just showing you the light is at 0%, and the light is about 6 feet away. From this perspective it looks closer, but the light is actually 6-7 feet away from the model. And I'm going to be adjusting the intensity of the light now. Right now is at 50% and then at 100%. So as you can see, a 650 watt light, sometimes you need 2, 3, maybe 4 of those things if you have a modifier installed, as you can see here. Right now I have the reflector, and as you can see, you need barely any power. So right now it's only 25%, and of course at 100% you have this here, all that power. So the correct exposure kind of will be about 30%. But that fills the model, as you can see there. So here's the light, a bare bulb, and of course you're going to need more power because the light is wider and softer, and this is the result you see here. 100% looks like this, 50% looks like that, and nothing at all looks like this. So right now I have the light at 5600 Kelvin, and then I'm going to try it now at 5000. I'm doing this very quick, guys. I mean, I'm looking through the viewfinder here real quick because just to give you guys an idea, okay? So at 4500, looks like this here. So this is a very quick thing here. We're in the mall, we're not really allowed to do this here, and I can't leave the studio alone. So just to show you guys a quick little thing here, because if I was showing this for real, of course I'm gonna spend a whole lot of time in tweaking the right color there, 52.5 something 100 degrees Kelvin. But just to show you guys how bright the light is and in the overall look of the whole thing here. And this light is actually exceedingly pretty. Look at this thing here. And they also have the GVM logo on the side here. Here's the whole look of the light. As you can see, it's a very pretty light. And there is one design flaw here, that this particular light here, any softbox, including the softbox, the GVM included sending it to me here, you have to remove that screw to control the rotational function of the softbox, because the first time that I actually put the softbox here, it actually pissed me off a lot because it caused a big nasty scratch right here. By the way, I actually have the Canon R3 touch-up paint, which happens to be pretty much 99% the same color here, and it actually fixed. Look, the scratch is no longer here. Very nice, right? Most lights, this come actually further out, and this one here is all recessed in here. So pretty much any softbox that has the little knob there, you actually have to remove, unless you don't care about causing a nasty scratch every time you actually put a modifier here. So this light here, and I'm not gonna do this again, I'm just gonna show you almost there. So this thing is gonna hit right here. So when you twist it, it goes. So you have to remove this thing here, including the washer. Either put an M5 screw right here or leave the way it is. The good thing is this is actually very easy to install because it's not tight. So it slides in here. So I'm gonna actually install. It's an awkward angle for me here, but as you can see, look, I'm just holding with my finger, like hold the ring, and there you go. But look how close this whole thing gets to the actual fixture right here. Look how close that is. And to remove this, just slide it as usual, and it easily comes out, even if this whole thing here is loose, like this. So as you can see, the screw has no interference with the light, so everything is good to go. And this applies to like every single light. I have a Godox FLS10, which is the proper Fresnel size to go on a light of this power right here. So I was gonna show you guys how this light performs with the Fresnel lens. But the thing is, there's again a huge flaw in design on the front element of this light. As you can see, is very recessed. I mean, the front of the light is very pretty, but the lights like this here, for example, the very GVM lights they make here, most of the lights are supposed to extend out a little bit here. Because this light is very recessed here, there's like 2 millimeters out, and this one is a whole like 1.5 centimeters. Because when I try to install this Fresnel lens right here, it doesn't have enough clearance. It doesn't have the necessary 2 or 3 millimeters in to make this thing actually rotate and lock in here. Therefore, at least on this particular model here, you cannot use a Fresnel lens with this light, just so you know. I'm not sure if the other lesser powerful lights on this series, they do the same thing. I have to check it out later because I don't have the other ones here. But the way it is here, unless they release the Mark II GVM Pro 650B, most Fresnel lights, if not all of them, they are not going to be able to fit in here. So as you can see, I have another GVM light, the SD150R, which has the same normal front element to receive most Bowens Mount accessories. And as you can see, the Fresnel lens is mounted, installed. You can do all the stuff here. And to release, you just release. But this light here, the way they made, it doesn't have this extension here like most Bowens Mount features have. So you're not going to be able to fit most Fresnel lights, if not none at all. So overall, speaking about the outside of the light here, GVM finally listened to my request because most lights, pretty much every single light that they have a plasticky, non-twistable ratchet knob, and this one here is 100% made of aluminum, and you can actually adjust to any position that you want. And I don't care what softbox, whatever it is that you want to put in here, this light will sustain the softbox. It will not droop at all. I don't care what you put in here. This thing is very strong and it's not going anywhere. And check this out, you gotta see this too. I never seen a light that has this feature before. Of course, this light has a front protective glass element, so bugs they don't crawl up in here and burn and damage your LED light, especially for a 650 watt light, right? Did you know this thing is actually removable? So if you need or if you want the LED to breathe, you can actually remove this thing here when you are inside the studio. There are no bugs here, right? Hope not. And speaking of heat here, be careful with what you put in front of this light. Again, this is a high power light. Don't be using those little tiny little Fresnels. They are not designed for high power lights. You need to be using a huge Fresnel light that it is designed for these lights. And also there's more room to breathe because otherwise you're going to be overheating everything, your Fresnel lights and the LEDs here. And the heat is never a good thing for computer hard drives and also LED bulbs. The longevity of the LEDs depends how much you crank this up to 100% all the time and how much heat there is in here and what you put in front of this modifier. When you put this back here, be careful, don't drop this because I have concrete floor. This will be very bad news. So make sure you take your time and screw this in here very slowly and very gently. There you go. The other lights that GVM makes on the Pro series, anything under 500 watts, it has their own display on the back here and there is no ballast. So this particular one here, there's nothing here because there is a ballast to connect to. Now regarding the ballast, most components are made of aluminum except the top and the bottom is made of polycarbonate plastic. And the only thing that I don't like about this particular ballast is because all the connections are under here, so you have to crawl down here and actually connect the light. So the fan on top, of course, is going to be extracting air this way here, but in my opinion, design-wise, this fan should be actually on the bottom, blowing air this way, while you have the connectors right here on top. So when you actually have the ballast mounted on the stand here, you actually have everything within sight here, otherwise you don't have to crawl all the way under here. These buttons are made of rubber, so when you press them, there is no noise. They're very quiet. And these knobs here, they're made of metal and they actually have steps on it. So when you actually rotate, there is no play and they feel very nice to press and they are also quiet. And this power button here is made of metal. So when you actually turn it on, turn it off, is a solid thing here. And speaking of color accuracy, make sure you actually preheat your LED devices for the best accuracy in color. Usually when you actually turn on an LED light very cold, don't expect the thing to be instantly accurate. Even if this light is very accurate, I would recommend you to warm it up at least 15 minutes before you start shooting. And as you can see, this light is a 600 watt, but it is actually capable of DC power. You can actually put 2 V-mount batteries here. However, the power is going to be reduced in half, which leaves you with 325 watt light, which is still a very convenient light to actually take it outdoors. And be careful with lithium-ion batteries because the faster you discharge the battery, the more you accelerate the wear and tear of these batteries. So when I actually take these things on set using V-mount batteries, I usually like to take it easy as much as possible on a V-mount battery, maybe shooting at 20%, 25%, especially if I'm doing interviews and whatnot, or if the subject is actually close. Just avoid to crank it up to 100% all the time, because you will damage your V-mount batteries. Even if there was a thing to attach 4 V-mount batteries rated at 200 watt-hours each, which is plenty of power to power a 600 watt light, it would still not be a good thing to drain the battery so fast. And just like you see in most ballasts, this is not hot swappable. If you remove one V-mount battery, the power is going to be cut off. And when you actually have the light plugged in via AC, you will always prioritize AC mode, even if you have a V-mount battery connected here. So right now, I'm looking at the display here on CCT, and I have the little icon that represents AC. Now once you remove the AC, as you can see, the light is not interrupted. As you can see, actually there's a warning here. Please connect the lamp, it's going to restart. So I guess I'll turn it off. That's not a good thing, so ignore what I just said. Just don't do it. That one I just found out right now, so don't do that. So it's either on AC or DC. And if you can actually avoid to have this cord here, it's better. Another thing to keep in mind here regarding V-mount batteries attached to the ballast. So when you're actually done shooting, remove the ballast, because I actually made a power consumption test. So it is safe to assume that this ballast will also drain very slowly the juice from your V-mount battery. So again, when you're done, put the light away, just remove everything, unplug it, and remove the V-mount batteries out of here. Now, a lot of people ask me in the comment section, okay, so how long can you actually run with these 2 batteries rated at 190 watt each on this light here at 100%, which brings it a total watts to 325 watts. So multiply 190 times 2 is 380, divided by 325. You can actually run this light for an hour exactly. And if you run at 50%, that's a 2-hour run with this light with these batteries here. And that's assuming your battery is brand new or well kept or well maintained. For V-mounts, for this particular light being 325 watt-hour light, I would recommend a minimum of 190 watt-hour V-mount battery. However, GVM makes their own V-mount batteries as well, if you guys are not aware. But I think the biggest one they make is 160 watt-hour, and I only have one, otherwise I would actually have installed the both of them here. So I have this particular one for DNO lighting, and they're great and they last a long time and never had a problem with it. And just in case if you like to pack your V-mount batteries individually, check out these little cases that I usually buy on Amazon, and they fit exactly the size of the actual battery. So nothing comes into contact with the actual terminals, which can be dangerous, right? Fire and everything. So these are great. This light comes with a very generous power cord in length. That thing is at least 20 feet long. And the actual power cord that attaches from the ballast to the light, everything is very easy to attach. All you have to do is to push it in and it locks itself automatically. And to remove this cable from the light and the ballast, all you have to do is just twist it out and the cable comes off. And don't forget to turn it off like I did before you actually unplug this here. And both the light and the ballast, they feature a female connection right here and a male connection right here. So you cannot do this wrong. And you simply match here and push it in. It will automatically twist and lock this way. One thing that I don't like about this ballast design is because you cannot place it vertically on the floor as long as you have cables connected right here. You can actually place it on the floor this way here, which is not a big deal. So I guess the best idea is to connect everything first and then you actually couple this thing right here. But I actually don't mind to actually be crawling under here and installing the cables right there. No big deal. This is actually a pretty thing to look at. You don't want to be placing this thing on the concrete of a pavement, right? You know, at least bring a little yoga mat or a rug or something, anything that protects the finish of these things, right? This is actually good for resale value as well. Keep your equipment in pristine condition so you always look like this here. So right now I'm going to be doing a power consumption test here using a kilowatt. The light is completely off. As you can see, it's drawing about 2 watts. So there might be a slight possibility if you leave a V-mount battery attached here for like a week, for example, you probably will drain the battery. I'm not sure, but this is what indicates. Otherwise it will be 0 watts. So let's turn this thing on here. So right now with the ballast on, this is drawing between 7 to 9 watts and the fan is set to silent, which means not even the fan is spinning here or there. So right now the light is set to smart and CCT at 0% is about 8-9 watts or something like that. So the light at 0.1% is going to draw already 23-24 watts. At 1%, you're talking here 28-26 watts. At 10%, it jumps to 92 watts, 10%. And at 100%, you're looking at 652, right on the dot, the GVM 650. So let's leave everything the way it is right now to be easy to follow. So let's leave the light to 100%. All I'm going to change now is the color temperature. So right now we are at 649 watts. All the way to 2700 degrees Kelvin, you have this here. Now switching to 3200 degrees Kelvin, halogen color temperature, you're looking at this here, 653 watts. Putting back to 5600 degrees Kelvin, you're looking at this here. And at 6800 degrees Kelvin, there is a slight more power consumption here. 650, 659, as you can see, is pretty much within the range. So with that said, even if you measure brightness only by going over there, it's going to be minimal, the difference between 2700 degrees Kelvin to 6800 degrees Kelvin. So again, 660 watts all the way down to 660. Somewhere in the middle here, 656. It's like 4 or 5 watt difference, which tells you the light is pretty much consistent in brightness as well. Because if it is jumping a little bit here, a few watts here, it's going to be jumping a quarter of a stop on your light meter. One thing to keep in mind, these are high-powered lights. If you're actually shooting in some small office or a regular home, the outlet is usually 15 amps, which means it can only handle 1,870 watts of power. So if you actually plug in on the same circuit 3 of these lights, you're going to trip a breaker. So here's the softbox the GVM sent along with this light, and this is an okay size softbox, and this is the biggest softbox that they make, I believe. And the biggest softbox that I've seen, they measure about 150 centimeters or 4.5 feet wide. And by the way, this light is actually the actual GVM Pro 650B set to 5600 degrees Kelvin. So this is what it looks like using the very light that I'm reviewing today. And for a 650 watt light using a small modifier like this here, it's okay. But you have the full usage of light this powerful. I would rather have that huge screen, the diffusion screen, that you can actually shine the light through it, which provides even a bigger source of light, right? So the thing that I want to show you guys here primarily is because since the first time somebody ever touched a softbox, even the old school ones, which is even harder to do than this one here, I actually saw another creator saying that they actually have to bring a rubber mallet on set to be able to relieve the pressure of these rods. That's because you guys do it wrong. And I'm going to teach you here a technique that you should really pay attention to if you don't want to break these rods of any softbox of this type here, and also not to hurt your fingers, because when you set up this whole thing here, the amount of pressure on these rods is enormous, right? So I'm going to disassemble the softbox. All you have to do is to raise these rods upwards, and then at the same time you press the button down here, because if I try to release this here, it's almost impossible. And when you do, you might risk to break the springs right here. So what you have to do is to always bend the softbox, preferably on a rug or carpet, because on a concrete this thing is going to slide all over the place. So what you're going to do here is to bend like this. And then look how easy that is. Look, you bend it, super easy. And then when the softbox is halfway done, the pressure is significantly less, so you don't need to bend it anymore. You just continue to pull up the rods this direction, while at the same time you're actually pressing this button down here, right? So keep doing that. And there you go. And you do not have to remove this diffusers here. You lightly punch it in here like this. And one more time, and then you roll the softbox this way, and this also comes with this little thing here to tighten everything up. And to assemble the softbox is the opposite direction. You just make sure you open the softbox like this first, then put it upside down, and then there's no pressure here. And again, you must hold this as close as possible to here so you don't break the rods, or you don't bend anything, right? So you pull it up as close as possible. Don't be here because it's not a good idea. When the softbox is about halfway up, stop it. Then you start bending the softbox, and look how easy that is. It's like effortless. Bend it, And that's it, boys, right here. Now this is an old school softbox without those fancy little self-mounting things there. And this is what people will struggle forever to take this off here, because not even the Incredible Hulk can actually take this off. And this is a small softbox. If you have a huge softbox, the old school type like this here, the pressure here is enormous. You're gonna hurt your fingers, you're gonna hurt everything. It's the same exact procedure. I'm gonna show you guys how long I will take to remove this thing here. 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 seconds. Softbox is out. To assemble the softbox, the same technique. No pressure right now. When it's halfway through, bend the thing, and look how easy that is. It's like effortless. As long as you bend like this, that's how you do it. Now let's do the big one. That one is difficult, but it's the same exact procedure. If you try to do this here, you can't, okay? So bend it, and same speed that I take to remove this thing here, you gotta bend it. See that? If you don't bend it, it won't come off. So with the softbox this way, don't lift the softbox by the rods, because they're going to come out of place. It's going to be a pain in the ass to actually channel this down again. So you simply grab the whole thing with the fabric. And now we're going to assemble this. This is in case you guys already have softbox like this here. So you're going to hold the softbox this way and near your stomach like this here. Find the next one. And then you want to grab like this here. And then that's when it's time to bend the thing again. But bend it really good. And again, the bigger the softbox, the harder it is. And this is actually effortless. And the last one, gotta bend it. There you go. That's how it's done. I hope this was useful. So here's the front of the ballast. I'm gonna go real quick here. First of all, you have the CCT, source, and effect. To access, you just press this button in here, and the brightness is adjusted on top at 0.1% adjustments, and also the color temperature in 50 Kelvin increments, from 2700 degrees Kelvin all the way to 6800 degrees Kelvin. I wish you could actually punch in this knob for shortcuts such as the 3200 degrees Kelvin and then double tap here 5600 and so on, but it doesn't have that. In the top knob, you can actually adjust the brightness very quickly, just 2.5 turns, and the same thing here, very quickly down to 0. I'm gonna leave it set to 22, so it gives a nice exposure there in the background. To go back, press the back button, and then select your source, punch it in, and now without pressing anything, which is a little bit confusing, now you can actually change the effects here, and then to change the brightness and the color temperature, you gotta press it in now, and then you actually control with this knob, and the brightness with the upper knob. And to access the speed, you gotta punch it in again, and then you control with the bottom knob here, from random all the way down to 1. Press the back button, again and again. Now let's check the menu. You have the DMX settings, press it in, and then you have this information here, press the back button. Next will be the DM curve, which is self-explanatory. I like mine set to linear, press the back button. Next we have the Bluetooth settings, punch it in, then press it again. Then you select here, here, and there. Bluetooth reset, you can actually set yes. This happens. This is just in case the light does not want to communicate with the app. Press the back button, and then next will be Studio. I don't know what that is, it's not on the manual, but I'll leave it set to on. To turn it off, you just punch it in again, press the back button. Next one will be frequency settings. This is when you do high frame rate, slow motion, 120 frames, 240 frames. Depending on what country you are, you can set between 30,000 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz. But in US, I think you should leave it set to 30,000 Hertz. Press the back button. Next will be the fan settings. The silent mode, and then the light at 100%. This is how bright it's gonna get. That's all. You don't need to use the silent, just ignore this thing here, because the smart mode is already super quiet, and here's the light at 100%. And you do not lose any intensity or brightness by going to the high or smart. It's the same exact output. Press back, Then the next one will be the language, Chinese and English. Press back, and that should be it. Now the cool button here, as far as I understand, in the manual is supposed to activate the highest velocity of the fan, but when we actually hit the cool here, nothing happens, and when you press and hold, it's more like a standby feature. This is the hard turn on and turn off, and this is a standby. So when you press and hold the cool again, the light is going to turn on again. So it has nothing to do with the fan. So when we actually have the menu set to smart or high, this has no effect whatsoever by changing the fan speed or to help cool the light with the fan at high speed. Now check out these effects here. I'm only going to show you the two primary ones, which is the candlelight and the lightning thing. So it's not going to take long. So pressing in here. So here's what you have. So you can actually have the candle all the way down here, or a screw as you like, if there's such thing, right? Anyway. And then press the button again. That's when you actually adjust the speed, which is the bottom knob here. You have random, it looks like this, which doesn't do a whole lot. And this is a common thing on most LED lights that I've seen. They need a lot of work here. So it's just like a pulsating type of thing. Now to access the lightning, press it in, and this is what I want to show you. You can actually change the color temperature all the way down and all the way up. I usually like the thing all the way to 6800. I usually like it set to 6800 because lightning can be as much as 10,000 Kelvin or probably 15,000 degrees Kelvin. Now the interesting thing is on the application there has a button there that says trigger. So this will only repeat once, which is great for an actual, camera rolling situation on set. You don't want this to do this, right? Most lights that I see, this thing always keeps looping like this, which is not what we want. So here's a quick tutorial of the app. Yet I'm going to show everything, but very quickly. If this is the first time you ever bought a GVM product, light, or if you're using the app for the first time. So the first thing you want to do, all the way on the bottom, says add device, click on that, and then click on that check mark right on the right, and then start connecting. And I'm going to do this in real time so you can see how long it takes to connect the light. It doesn't take a long time, but it is always reliable. This app never freezes, never crashes. Hit done. Then you click on Manage. Console means accessing the actual light inside. You can also rename or remove the light completely. So let's click on Console. And then here's your CCT. Then you actually have shortcuts 3200, 4300, 5600. And at the bottom is the dimming curve, which I always like to set it to linear. And at the bottom is the brightness at 1/10% increments. So you can do precise adjustments right here. So I'm going to leave it cranked up to about 80%. I'm actually bouncing this light on the ceiling here. This is a huge 3,200 square foot studio, so that's why you don't see a whole lot of light in there. Then you can actually turn the light on and off. You can also save presets. For example, let's say they want to do like 53.50 Kelvin and the intensity to 73.2%. All you got to do is click save here, hit OK, name something, right? And then go back. Here's your source matching. You have the tungsten. And you have all these pre-configured colors here. And going back, you have the effects. You can also change the color of the effects. Now, one interesting thing with the lighting, because every single app that you've seen before, when you hit start, it's going to be repeating this over and over. So when you're actually rolling an actual take, you don't want this thing to be looping like this, right? So you hit stop, and instead you press the trigger button. And then it's going to repeat only once. For example, I'm going to be pressing the button right now, the trigger, and it's going to shut up until you come back here and press the trigger button again. So I'm doing this right now, which is great. I'm going to go back to start, which means you can also adjust the color temperature if you want, to the warmest to the coldest. I usually like the coldest. And then you have the rate right here. That's how often it will happen, but you have the trigger button anyway. One more effect I'm going to show you guys is the candle light. You must click the start button here for the effect to play. Then you have the rate as well. And the candlelight effects on most lights is just okay. The best candlelight effects that I've ever seen is a light from B&H brand. It's called Luxley. The only light that I've seen that has the most realistic effect on a candle is a Luxley light from B&H. That's actually a B&H brand on their high-end lights. But you can also make this candlelight here as cool as you like, if there is such thing as a 6800 Kelvin candlelight, but the options are here. And that should conclude the app tutorial for most parts. And on the bottom, you can actually create groups, and you can actually control them both together or separate, or you come back here and individually access every single light on their own by itself. Now let's talk about fan noise, which is something that guys definitely want to hear, right? I was actually quite pleased the way they actually engineered this particular light. It has a very large fan with a lot of blades. And when you go to the settings, this light features 3 fan modes or speeds. One is the smart mode, the other one is the high, which the fan is actually spinning at the maximum RPM at all times, and also the smart, which is going to be outputting the light to, I would guess, 50 watts. So it is very dim, but you can actually get away with a smaller room, just in case you don't want the fan to be turned on at all, and this is not going to happen. But I assure you that on smart mode, even for interviews with the light set to 20%, 40%, which is already more than enough for an interview set like this here, the fan is not going to get in the way at all. So I left the light set to maximum brightness for about 25 to 30 minutes, and the fan, it was on a reasonable speed and noise, which your microphones will not pick it up. Especially if you're using a shotgun microphone, which is directional. So even if I'm using a microphone like this, which is only directional, the fan still is not a problem. I mean, I understand nobody likes fan noise, myself included, but this feature with the silent mode, that shouldn't even be there. It wasn't necessary to do, because on smart mode, that fan is not going to cause any trouble whatsoever for your recordings. So right now I'm in the mall, there's a lot of noise here, occasionally people walking by outside my studio here, so I'm going to be demonstrating the fan noise on the back of the studio later on, so you guys can hear in a very quiet room what this fan is actually doing. So here's the perfect demonstration of fan noise for you. I'm in the back of the studio, my office here, where the space is dead quiet. You can hear a hair falling on the ground right here. So right now, the light is set to, let's go to the menu here, fan settings. Right now the light is set to smart mode, and the fan is actually spinning. And I'm gonna be placing the microphone very close to the light. Here's the microphone right here. Nobody's gonna do that, right? It's just to show you guys the noise of the fan. I cannot hear the fan. All I hear is like, that's all. And this light has been on for like 15 minutes. So right now the camera is exactly 4 feet away from this light. So as you can hear or not hear at all, there's no fan noise, and I'm right here behind the camera wearing the microphone. So to let you guys know, fan noise with this light is not a problem. I don't even know why they even put a feature of silent mode here, because you don't need this at all. All that does is to reduce the light to like 50 watts or something. And whatever it is that you're doing, even if you are in a tiny space, fan is not a problem. Now I usually like the fan cranked up to maximum every time I don't have any audio critical application here. So let's do that right now. Select to high. I actually pressed the wrong thing. I'm in silent mode right now, and this is the maximum brightness. For example, here the light is at 100%, and this is all you get as far as lighting output here. So let me go back there and put it back to high, and here's what happens to the fan. Which to me is a relief, because I like the fan blasting, because it gets really hot up here. So this light or any other super powerful lights that you have, the more you do this, the better for your LED and for your whole overall structure of the light here. Now I'm going to switch back to smart mode, and as you can see, there is no problem with lighting output. Nothing happens one bit. The whole light is set to 100%, and watch this. No changes whatsoever, not even one photon less. So here you go, silence again. And I'm right here. The microphone is right there. And that's all you hear. Now I'm putting the microphone away from the light towards the camera. The microphone is pointing straight at the light right now, as you can see. Now as the light gets hotter, the fan is actually now increasing the speed. It was twice as much, and I'm right here wearing the microphone. You cannot hear the fan. And who's going to shoot with the light 1 inch from the person, right? Nobody. Now again, the light is set to 100%. When you do an interview type of thing, you're going to be around 20%, even 10%, like I showed you before on my main video on, on this particular video on YouTube, right? So this fan is going to be actually reducing the RPM way more than this here. So again, fan is not an issue with this light, trust me. So right now I have the light set to smart mode and I'm going to be cranking it up to 100%. So I'm going to actually take my phone on the back of the Ballast to show you guys how the exposure does not change if you set the light to smart mode or the high mode. So here's the actual exposure right there. And as you can see, the light is set to smart mode. When you change it to the high mode and press the button to activate, and as you can see, the exposure does not change at all, one bit. As soon as you change it to silent, look what happens. That's what happens here. This is the maximum brightness you can have, which is actually plenty of brightness of the camera shooting at ISO 800 and aperture of f4. So in this particular scenario, the fan will never turn on, but as you can see, you have plenty of light for an interview set like this with the softbox placed about 5 feet away from you. That's the end of my review. I want to thank you again for reaching this far in the video. So if you have any other questions or concerns or comments, please drop them down in the comment section. I'll respond to everything that I see there. So once again, thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you next time.